The explosion shook the valley like thunder. Fire rolled across the broken ground. Metal pieces flew through the air. Smoke covered the sky so thick that even the twin suns looked pale behind it. Then, silence. Not normal silence. The kind of silence that comes after something terrible. Burning ships lay scattered across the battlefield. Alien soldiers slowly stood up from behind broken shields. Some were injured. Some were not moving at all. And in the middle of the gray dust, she was lying there, Elara, the human medic, the only human brave enough to walk into a war between giants and still carry only a small medical bag. Her armor was cracked at the shoulder. Her helmet was gone. A thin line of blood ran from her forehead down to her cheek. Her eyes were closed. She was not moving. A tall alien warrior stepped closer. His armor was dark and heavy, shaped like bone and steel. Blue light moved across the lines of his suit. She took the blast directly. One soldier said quietly, "No human can survive that." Another answered. They all knew she had jumped forward. The blast had been aimed at the alien commander. She had pushed him aside, and now she was on the ground. The commander stood still for a long moment. His breathing was slow, heavy. "She made a foolish choice," he said in a cold voice. "Humans are fragile." But even as he said it, something in his tone was not steady, because they all remembered. She had healed their wounded without fear. She had stood in front of creatures twice her size and told them to sit still while she stitched their wounds. She had spoken to them like they were not monsters. And someone else remembered too. A small shape moved through the smoke, low to the ground. Bright orange fur, now covered in ash. The cub. It was not supposed to be here. It had been ordered to stay inside the safety ship. It was small, weak compared to its kind. Many had called it useless. Some had even called it cursed. But it had followed her again. It always followed her. The cub stepped carefully over broken metal and stopped beside her body. It looked at her face. No movement. It made a soft sound from its throat. Not a growl. Not fully a cry. It placed one small paw on her arm. Still nothing. The soldiers watched quietly. "Remove the animal," one guard said, but the commander raised his hand slightly. "Wait." The cub pushed her shoulder gently with its head. No response. Its tail dropped low. Its ears folded back. It climbed slowly onto her chest, small claws gripping the broken armor. The soldiers gasped. "What is it doing?" The cub lowered its head and pressed its ear against her chest. The battlefield felt frozen. Even the wind seemed to stop. Seconds passed. Long seconds. The commander's eyes narrowed. "It does not understand death," he said quietly. But then, the cub lifted its head suddenly. Its eyes were wide, glowing brighter than before. It pressed its head against her chest again, harder this time, as if listening deeper. Then it let out a sharp sound. A call, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. The alien soldier stiffened. That sound was not random. It was a signal. The cub looked around wildly, then back at her face. It licked the blood from her cheek. It pushed her shoulder again. And then her fingers twitched. Very small. So small that most did not see it. But the cub did. Its ears lifted fast. It pressed its paw against her chest again. There, a faint beat. Slow. Weak. But real. "She lives," one soldier whispered in shock. The commander stepped forward, quickly now. He knelt beside her and scanned her armor with his wrist device. "Impossible," he muttered. Her heartbeat was barely there. Her breathing shallow. But she was alive. The cub made another sound, softer this time. Almost relieved. It curled its body protectively over her chest, as if shielding her from a world. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed across the valley. The commander looked up toward the sky. Enemy ships. They had been waiting for this moment. They saw the blast. They saw her fall. They thought the defense was broken. "They are returning," a soldier warned. Attack formation above the clouds. The cub looked up at the dark sky, too. Its small body trembled. It looked back down at her face. Her breathing was weak. She could not move. The commander stood tall again. "Prepare shields," he ordered. "We will hold them." But deep down he knew, without her, they would lose. The cub slowly stood up on her chest. Its eyes began to glow brighter, brighter than before. The air around it felt heavy, strange. The soldier stepped back without knowing why. The cub looked at the sky, then back at her, and in that quiet, heavy moment, the small, weak, unwanted cub made a decision. If she could not stand for them, then it would, and the sky above them began to shake. The sky did not just shake. It answered. A deep vibration moved through the air like the planet itself was breathing. The alien soldiers looked up in fear. Their shields flickered as if something unseen was pressing against them. The cub stood on Alara's chest. Small, fragile, but no longer afraid. Its orange fur lifted slightly as energy moved under its skin. White light burned inside its eyes. Not wild, not angry, focused. The enemy warships broke through the clouds. Dark metal hulls. Red weapon lights charging. They are targeting the medic, one soldier shouted. Of course they were. Even the enemy had learned something during this war. Wherever the humans stood, hope survived. And now she was lying still. Perfect moment to end it. A beam of red energy formed beneath the largest warship. It aimed directly at her body. The commander stepped forward. Shield her. But before the shield units could activate, the cub roared. Not loud, not like a beast, but deep, ancient. The sound was not meant for the soldiers. It was not meant for the enemy. It was meant for something else, something older. The beam fired, but before it could hit the ground, the air above the valley cracked open like glass. A wall of invisible force stopped the blast midair. The beam shattered into pieces of light. Silence followed. The enemy ships froze in position. Their scanners began to scream with warning signals. Unknown energy barrier detected. Source unknown. No! One terrified enemy officer whispered inside his ship. Source confirmed. He zoomed in on the battlefield. On the cub. That thing is not small. Back on the ground. The cub's body trembled. It was using too much energy. Its paws pressed harder against Alara's armor. Its claws scratched the metal. The commander stared in disbelief. That energy level, it matches ancient royal records. The soldiers looked at him. Ancient records were not spoken about openly. They were stories, legends. Long ago, before modern fleets and weapons, there was a species that ruled through presence alone. They did not fight wars. They ended them. That species had vanished centuries ago. Or so everyone believed. The cub lifted its head toward the sky again. Its eyes burned brighter. And then it howled, this time louder. The sound traveled beyond the clouds, beyond orbit, into space, far above the planet. Hidden in deep orbit, something massive shifted. A shadow moved across the stars. The enemy fleet detected it too late. New signals appeared on every radar screen. Huge, powerful, not coming from hyperspace. They had already been there, watching. Waiting, back on the ground, the cub's breathing became weaker. Energy drained from its small body. It collapsed beside Alara's shoulder, but it did not lose consciousness. It turned its head toward her face. Her lips moved slightly. A faint whisper escaped. Stay. Her voice was barely air, but the cub heard it. Its ears lifted, and that small word gave it strength again. The sky above the valley split open. Gigantic shapes descended slowly through the clouds. Not ships, not machines. Living creatures. Massive wings stretching wider than warships. Eyes glowing like suns. Ancient beings of the same species as the cub, but fully grown, fully powerful. The alien soldiers fell to one knee without command. Even the commander lowered his head, because now he understood. The cub was never weak. It was never cursed. It was hidden. Protected, one of the ancient bloodline. The largest creature landed between the battlefield and the enemy fleet. The ground cracked under its weight. It did not attack immediately. It spoke. Its voice was not sound. It was pressure inside every mind. Who dared harm Protector? The enemy fleet panicked. Weapons fired wildly. It did not matter. Within seconds, beams of golden energy tore through their ships like paper. Explosions filled the sky. Flaming debris rained down far away from the valley, as if controlled, precise, merciless. And then silence again. But this silence was different. Not fear, not loss, power. The massive ancient creature lowered its head slowly toward the cub. The small orange body looked even smaller now. The giant eyes softened. You called? The ancient voice echoed gently. The cub blinked weakly. It did not answer with power. It simply turned its head toward Alara. The message was clear. Not for war. For her. The ancient creature looked at the human lying on the ground, at the blood, at the broken armor. She carries our mark, it said. The commander lifted his head in shock. What mark? But before anyone could answer, Alara's hand moved, slowly, weakly. Her fingers touched the cub's fur. The cub closed its eyes, and for the first time since the blast, it relaxed. The ancient creature stepped back. The sky began to clear. But everyone present knew something had changed forever. This was no longer a simple alliance between humans and aliens. This was something deeper. The cub had not called for war. It had called for family. And the galaxy had answered. The battlefield was quiet, but it was not peaceful. The ancient beings still stood in the valley. Their massive wings folded. Their golden eyes watched everything. The alien soldiers did not move. No one dared to speak. Alara was still lying on the ground. The cub was beside her, breathing weak but steady. Then something unexpected happened. The largest ancient creature stepped closer to the human. It lowered its head until its glowing eyes were only a few feet above her. And suddenly, every soldier felt something enter their mind. Not pain, not fear, memory. Images flashed across their thoughts. They saw a distant world, burning, destroyed, ancient cities falling, small cubs crying as warships attacked from the sky. They saw betrayal. The ancient species had once trusted others, and that trust had nearly ended them. So they hid. They scattered their young across different systems. They made them appear weak, small, unimportant. The cub was never abandoned. It was hidden, protected from enemies who hunted royal blood. The vision ended. The soldiers gasped. The commander fell fully to both knees. Royal blood, he whispered. The cub was not just royal. It was the last heir. And then the ancient creature spoke again, this time directly to Alara. She carries the mark of bond. The commander frowned. Explain. But the answer did not come from the ancient creature. It came from Alara. Her eyes slowly opened. She looked confused at first. Then she saw the giant shapes around her. And the cub. You called your family, she whispered softly. The cub lifted its head weakly and gave a small sound. The ancient creature's voice echoed gently. When you touched him for the first time, when you healed him without fear, you completed the ancient bond. A soft golden light appeared on Alara's wrist. A symbol. The same symbol that glowed faintly under the cub's fur. The soldiers stared in shock. The commander lowered his head again. She is not just a medic. She is guardian. The enemy had not attacked today by accident. They had discovered the royal blood. They wanted to end it before it awakened, but they failed, because the cub believed she was dead, and love had triggered something stronger than fear. The ancient creature turned toward the commander. This world is now under our protection. The commander bowed deeply. We accept. The massive being slowly began to rise back into the sky. But before leaving, the largest one looked at Alara again. If you fall, he will burn the stars. It was not a threat. It was truth. The creatures disappeared into the clouds. The sky cleared completely. Sunlight touched the valley again. For the first time in many years, the battlefield felt safe. The soldiers carefully helped Alara sit up. She winced in pain but smiled softly. The cub crawled into her lap immediately. You scared me, she whispered. The cub pressed its head against her chest, listening again, making sure her heart was still beating. The commander approached slowly. He removed his helmet fully this time, in front of everyone, a sign of deep respect. We were wrong, he said quietly. We thought strength was size, or weapons, or fear. He looked at the cub, and we thought this one was weak. Alara gently stroked the cub's bright orange fur. He's not weak, she said softly. He just needed someone to believe in him. The commander nodded. And now the entire galaxy will. News of the event spread faster than light. Enemy fleets changed course. Political leaders shifted alliances. The story became legend, not because of the ancient beasts, not because of the destroyed enemy ships, but because of one small truth. The cub thought she was dead, and instead of running, instead of hiding, it chose call the stars. Years later, young soldiers would ask about that day, and the commander would always answer the same way. Power is not in claws. It is not in fleets. It is in who you choose to protect. On a quiet hill far from the battlefield, Alara stood watching the sunset. The cub, now larger but still bright orange, stood beside her. Stronger, but still gentle. She placed her hand on its head. "You're not alone anymore," she said. The cub looked up at the sky. Far above, faint golden shapes moved between the stars. Watching, protecting, waiting. The galaxy had learned something important that day. Never underestimate a human heart, and never underestimate the creature that loves them. Because when love thinks it has lost everything, it does something no one expects.